In this Excel demonstration, we're going to construct a scatter plot and then determine the equation of the regression line. And then the last thing that we'll do is we'll find the value of the correlation coefficient and come up with that value for R based on the value of R squared that the scatter plot will give us. The workbook that you want to use for this demonstration is called Excel Demonstration, Correlation, and Regression. So we're using the example where over the past several years, the college deans have been interested in the relationship between the number of absences and a student's final grade. What we want to start with is we're going to construct the scatter plot. I'm going to highlight these data values, the number of absences in the final grade. Click on Insert, go over to Charts, and pick Scatter Bubble Chart. Scatter is this very first one, so that's the one we'll click on. Now you want to make sure when you're doing these that you adjust the scale of the X and or Y axis if needed, so that your scatter plot fills the entire chart space. So to start with, I'm going to click on the Y values and I'm going to double click so that I can get the format to come up on the right. Maybe. Excel not responding. Okay. Then over here, I'm going to take this minimum value and I think I'll start mine at 30. Then the maximum is going up to 100. The scale that I'm going to have on the left is that it's going to go up by tens, and so it'll start 30 going all the way up to 10. All the way up to 100. So when I adjust it, that's what it's going to look like. Then if I look at the x-axis, so let's look at its scale. So again, I'm going to double click. And let's say we start the minimum at 1. And let's make the maximum 16. Then the units, the tick marks that are going to be along the major axis, oh, it automatically defaulted to 17. I'm going to change that to 16. Then on the major axis, I'm going to make these units go up by 1 because that's what my data looked like as far as the absences were concerned. And so I really want to see that detail all the way from 1 to 16. So I'm going to change this to 1. So now I have my scatter chart and I'm going to add the chart title up at the top. I'm going to label the two axes. So up at the top, I'm going to call this chart Absences and Final Grades. Then I'm going to add chart elements. I'm going to add the axis title, primary horizontal. So here I'm going to put final grade, or no, this is number of absences. And then on this other one, I'm going to add my chart element, the axis title, primary vertical. So on this axis, I'm going to say final grade in percent. Or we could put the percent in parentheses so that we're indicating the units. So now my chart looks good as far as all the values are concerned and all of the titles and everything. And so now here's my scatter plot. Now I want to add a regression line to it. So when I add that regression line, I'm going to come over here and I'm going to look at my data values, and I'm going back over where I've been before in the past, add chart element, and I'm coming down to trend line, linear. So now I have the best fit linear regression line through my data. Now I want to show the equation of what that line is. So I'm coming to this line and I want to format it. So I double clicked on the line itself, that dotted line, and it says trend line options again, and you can see exponential. So you can see all of the different ones above. Way down here, when you get down to the bottom, you click on display the equation on the chart and display the R-squared value on the chart. Then close that box. So now I've got those two, and I'm going to take this now. So I've got that equation. I'm just going to move it up here because I think it's kind of sitting right on my line. I'm just going to move it right above. So it says the equation of the best fit is y equals negative 3.6219x plus 102.49. So those would be the values for your A and B, or your A value and your B value, or your slope and your y-intercept in your equation of your regression line. Now let's talk about just getting the correlation coefficient. So I'm going to, oops, I don't want to move that. I want to move my whole chart over so that I can see my table again. So I'm coming over here. I'm going to scoot it over to the side just so that I can see my values that I've got here, the R and the R-squared. So in the value, I'm going to type in what R-squared is. So 0.891 0.8915. So for my R, remember it is just that mathematical relationship between the two, that R squared is truly taking R and squaring it, and R is truly taking R squared and taking the square root of it. So I'll say equals square root of this value that's down here. Closing the parenthesis, and we'll say the R 0.94419. So let's fix the rounding rules as far as that's concerned. So we said the rounding rule for that value for our R is 3. So we'll round it to 3. The same for our R squared, we'll round it to 3. I kept the full value when I did the square root because we want it to be exact. Remember, that's an intermediate calculation. But if we were asking to write down the value for R squared, we'd write down 0.892, and the value for R is 0.944. So we've got the scatter plot, we've got the equation of the regression line, and we have the value for both R and R squared.